Good morning, everyone. How's everybody? Can you hear me? Yay, see a thumbs up, marvelous. All right, today is not going to be a lengthy one, but it will cover a few things, and I hope everyone had a safe travels back, those who went to Gifted Ed. I think you had a great time, and then hopefully this month you're ready for Christmas break. And getting ready for New Year's and that time off and done all of your shopping. I haven't started part of it, but we're going to move on. All right. So, there we go. So, we're just going to go ahead and get into our series. So today we will look at update 114, the piece that's been there. I will publish the policy that they have provided. I've been given permission to share that at this point in time, so I'll share that also, and then we'll look at the pieces of policy that really deal with identification, and then we'll talk about the spring edition for GT Tuesday, and then we'll get into if you want to share what you're doing, and then Q&A, and then we'll have a great rest of our day. All right. See, people are trickling in. So this is the language for update 114 to the EHHB local, which is our Gifted and Talented program information, and the information in italics is the additional pieces. So basically, they are just stating the law. So a district's Gifted and Talented program shall address effective use of funds for programs and services consistent with the standards in the state plan for gifted and talented students. The district shall annually report to the Texas Education Agency regarding funding used to implement the district's Gifted and Talented program. The district shall annually certify to TEA the establishment of a Gifted and Talented program by the district and that the district's program is consistent. So as you know, basically, number one, you have established a Gifted and Talented program, and then we are working on that. What does that consistent policy look like and that implementation of that? I think for a lot, we will be addressing considering how to help you determine the effective use of funds. I've heard that there's more of a need of guidance and direction on what does that look like. So we will look at that on our side on what can we put out for the best use of funds, and so that you can be the most proactive and effective in your districts. Also working with your other counterparts in the district, such as your financial officers and some of your accounting officers who see things differently than our world sees it. And so, all right. So I'm gonna check the chat while we're here. So I see a couple of questions. So on the topic of the state plan, you can get from me the soft version of the state plan, the flip version that you can print in-house, or you can order it through Region 13 off of their website if you want hard copies pre-printed. So either one is available. If you have your own publishing capabilities, just email me. I will send you the soft copy and we can go from there. All right. So we are at our last GT Tuesday for this fall. And we're going to take a break and we'll resume later in the school year. So this is our last one for 2019. I want to say thank you for always coming out to listen and hopefully they have been beneficial from the few comments I received at Gifted Ed. You said they were. I also heard I need to slow down a little bit. So, and then I will work also to get you an agenda out a little bit earlier. With this being a 2-week turnaround, sometimes it's a little hard with other things that are on the plate. So we're starting a little series on identification. And as I said, so we will start today with identification. We have talked about the others that have check marks, and they are available on the Gifted Ed resources page for those who, and I did not put that slide in this time, but if we need it, I will show you how to get there later. So when we talk about student assessment, this is the one, if you remember, there's an overarching statement standard for each of our accountability sections. And for student assessment, we are looking at your procedures for identification, progress monitoring that allows students to demonstrate and develop their diverse talents and abilities. So how are you looking at your identification? How are you progress monitoring your students? And how we're building those students to go forth is what our goal is in this entire process. So student assessment in the updated plan looks beyond just identifying them and getting in the program or exiting out of the program or appealing their placement. But what do you do with them in placement? And so we're going to look at just the policy pieces. And so starting with, just so you're just kind of a friendly reminder of, so here are the pieces, you know, the high-level arch of pieces: identification, their information sessions. We're going to look at kinder later on. We're going to talk about student progress later. But then you got your selection committee. What do you allow for student exceptionalities? And then referral process. So, and then we change to referral. So you might need to look at your policies and your procedures to look at your terminology to make sure we are still saying that you are moving with what our standards and our processing to make sure we're using the correct terminology as we move forward. So I'm put the link out there. Marvelous. All right, so with identification, and this is just the first policy, and definitely everyone has policies, and if all you're using is what TASB has put out as your EHHB local or legal, you have some type of policy, and I always ask you to refer to your policy to look what it means, to make sure it is adhering to what you are doing as a district. So basically, everyone starts out with having written policies on student identification for your gifted and talented services. How are you identifying your students and how you're putting that into your policy should be approved by your board and disseminated to all parents. Now, on these policies, and when you start looking at them, you do not have to specify what you are using for your measures for identification. You have to identify what you have measures, but not specifically what those measures are. You need to be very concise. Do not let your policy should guide your methods, but not necessarily tie your hands. So think about what are you doing, and that will allow you to make updates and changes to your procedures easier as you move forward compared to your policies that's giving you the true guidelines of how do we really meet the law without having to change policies year to year or more than that as you go forward. So also your board policies, and when you look at an exemplary level of this, we're asking that you look at it for 3 years and it's modified as needed. So as we look at some of the policies as we move forward that we should be implementing and walking through, take a moment if you have not looked at EHB, look at what is there and which one are you using, because there's actually two versions out there depending on your district, if you have an inter-district transfer policy or not. So there's two versions of that policy out there for local. And if we have time, I will pull them up and we'll walk through it. So the next one is transfer, and this is one of those that's very, if nothing else is probably looked at in your district by someone outside, this is going to be the policy. So the policy to ensure transfer students are properly assessed, appropriately placed, following notification of enrollment in the district is included in board approved policy. Transfers from campus to campus within the district are also addressed in your board approved policy. So basically looking at what is your procedures for transfer students. As you know, I just typically know there's probably about 4 versions what most people are doing in their districts. Either you're accepting district placement. So whatever that prior district has accepted, you're accepting you're accepting whatever it is. Some of you are doing a review of that data and making further determination either by further testing or observation. Some are you test and then place, some place and then test. Make sure I said that correctly. Or you are observing and then placing, and then some are waiting for that next testing window before you place those students. So you have different policies moving on, and please make that clear because a lot of parents who are moving around do not understand. The only students that are kind of exempted from our transfer policy to a degree on placement is going to be your military students. Due to the military compact, those students are automatically placed into your programs, and then you may follow your procedures from there. So if part of your procedures is to test whenever your testing window is, or if you do it immediately upon notification or within 6 weeks of notification, you are still allowed to do that, but that child is receiving services in the interim between that time. And then looking at the exemplary level of this policy, we're looking at equitable access to for those transfer students in your policy. So looking at what are the best practices and your recommendations. So that's still local control, determine, but make sure your transfer policy is clear that everyone understands. And going to is EHBB. And I'm gonna put it in the thing. Okay. And if you ever just type in, look in your board policy, you'll look at under gifted. So the question is, you have one primary school, one elementary school, one middle, and one high school. No, you do not need a transfer policy from campus to campus. Most larger districts who do more of a campus-based identification process, and who have children moving from cross district to cross district, they have a local transfer policies within that. So so to answer the question, have we ever thought of putting homeless students under the same umbrella as military students? So there is no current law or rule that applies to homeless students being under a certain compact or a certain rules. That is something we can consider and put out there. A lot of them are looking for more guidance, and I will take that back to my McKinney-Vento counterpart as we look for those services. I know here in the state of Texas, depending on the weather and the season, we could have a lot of students going through a change like that. And I will make sure on this transfer. And we will consider that. So the next question, so military students automatically get in but can be disqualified after testing. So yes, it depends on what your district policy is. You can follow them, still follow your policy. And you can, if they don't make it, they don't make it. Those are our guidelines. That's part of the rules and regulations currently right now with our military students. Just know that that is the way it's placed. You would know what's best in your district, but I would say if you're going to follow procedures, I would say try to keep it as consistent, because if you start changing your procedures for one group, another group's going to hear about it and they're going to ask questions and then start appealing because of you're not following your own district policies. So I'll start, either you start looking at, are we going to open the door and automatically place everyone and then test, or just place? So I would say look at it that way as you go forward in your district. All right, so the next one is furlough. And I think everyone has a different mindset of furlough. And when I read what TASB has put out on furlough, it just kind of hits me in the wrong spot, but I'm not the maker of that, but I will be having conversations about that. So policy is adopted, allowing student furlough the opportunity for students to have a leave of absence from gifted and talented services for specified reasons and for a certain period of time without being exited. And I'm just going to give you my mindset on what a furlough has always been about. A furlough has always been, in my mindset, a leave of absence due to either there's something going on in the family, there's, some kind of emergency, students going through some stress level that they can't, they just need a break from working with the rigor and the level that we're expecting in GT. Once this is over, once their furlough is over, it's typically no longer than a semester or a year at the max, they're back in the program. And as we look further into some of the others, because I know a lot of others use furloughs as a process of you're not performing, and this is your opportunity to come out of GT services for non-performance and to do something else. And then we're going to reevaluate you as you come back into the program to continue services. I think, in my opinion, I'm just going to give you mine. In my opinion, that kind of leaves you an open door window of I can walk in when I want, I can walk out when I want, or I can put you in and out so you can still maintain that title and that name of being GT, even though once you put a student on furlough, you are to take their coding off during that point in time. But if they're not being successful or not wanting to follow the services that you are providing, why give them a time off? Because I know some of them use it for scheduling changes. If there's really a scheduling change, eventually some of these students that you are playing around with furloughs with, you really should be considered for being exited from your program services. I would highly recommend start looking at what is a process for, especially with us looking more at progress monitoring. How are we looking at our students to say this is our track. This is where you're not, especially if it's instigated on your behalf of non-performance. If they're not performing, work that process to get to a exit. It might be a growth plan. It might be some kind of strategies that's between you, the parent, and the child that says these are some certain things that you will do to maintain gifted and talented identification and services, or to look at an exit. If it's truly an emotional thing, going through the parents are going through a divorce, there's been a death in the family, where a kid needs a break, furlough is that perfect opportunity. But if it's a scheduling thing, or I'm gonna take a leave because this year we have Miss Copyright. Miss Copyright does a real rigorous project, and I don't want to do the project. What are we really saying? That you can choose and pick and choose the services that you want at this point in time, or we're going to look at, we have a continuum of services for a purpose, and there is a sequence from this, and we know how these work. So I'm gonna get off my soapbox. I know everyone has a little bit different process on how they are using it, and so I'm gonna go back up to make sure. So yeah, I would say look at really your furlough processes. Those who are really talking about that walk in and walk out because of the TPSP or your projects. They really need to understand, and I think you might want to further define your furlough process and what it really looks like. And then if they have furloughs, they should have the GT coding removed, yes, because they are not receiving GT services. That coding during that furlough should be removed. And if they are exited for non-performance, do they have to be referred again and be tested again? Yes, they do. So if they want to step away, they need to, if you work through the process and I know some districts do have a plan for walking, for exiting a student compared to a parent asking for it. So. So if you look at the student's attendance accounting handbook, you are to remove coding during our furlough because they are on a leave of absence and they are not receiving services, and that could, just remember, consistent service, you don't want any flags coming up. Yes, if they exit, you are to retest. Furloughs, now a lot of policy says you are retesting. Remember, that's a reassessment because you already determined they are being, so it depends. A lot has that's where your ambiguous, language comes through, is where you say you have no reassessment, but you're reassessing your students who are coming in off a furlough who are not receiving services. So you got a couple of things going on there where you have students who are not receiving services, but you're assessing them based on those GT services that they are not receiving. So watch that. If they're coming off of furlough, I think really you need to be looking at, are they in the right mindset to be back in the program? If not, what are your options at that point in time? Because really, it should be two things. Either you're going to place them or exit them. And it may not be more on a testing process, but it may be on determination of their work and their ability to do within your program, and not necessarily looking at a test that you should be giving out. So if we have GT through pre-AP and AP as secondary, but the student does not take any of these courses, are they considered exited? Do we need to uncode them? So if you have a student at the high school level or middle school level who are taking pre-AP and AP, but are not a part of your designated pre-AP, your designated GT services, yes, you do need to uncode them because they are not receiving GT services. Now, you need to consider how you're going to exit that child from the program. Basically, because you have a lot of parents, you want to be politically correct on just saying your child's not receiving services in our GT services, and we're going to exit them from the program. Some of them, you can just pass the paper and let them sign, but just make sure everyone understands they're not receiving services, and so you need to walk away. So here's the answer. The next question: could they do a furlough for a semester or year due to not being in a pre? That's going back to they're picking and choosing the services that they want. If this is a part of your services as a GT program, now you have to also to remember they don't have to be, depending on how your services are designed, they don't have to be in all 4 pre-AP or AP courses, but they have to be in something that says they're receiving GT services. And if we're going to start allowing students to say, I'm going to choose what pre-AP, AP courses I want for the year, and they have student selection, that's fine. But part of that has to be, and your counselors have to understand, these are our GT services. This is the offerings that we have. They have to follow those. They have to go through that, or because otherwise you're going through a revolving year of, we're going to put you on a furlough for a semester, a year, continuously, and next thing you know, it's been 3 years, and we're back at high school, and senior year, and you want GT, we're going to add this back on to get some extra points. So, or depending on your weights and your GPA and how you're setting things up, certain point, some of your GT courses have higher weights than others. Some of them don't. So I think you really need to think about what is the full plan, look at your scope. If they're not wanting to be in a pre-AP, AP, and that's part of your GT services, I would say not necessarily furlough. I would really start considering exiting from the program. If they're not going, you're paying someone to teach these students at this level, and if you're not going to have students going into these courses, why put the extra effort out there? And then look at if you need to look at other courses that are available that you can provide services through. So, because no one says you have to use pre-AP or AP as your GT services, you have to look at what you have as a program and what your district is offering. Then we get into reassessment, and then so this is where you're looking at based on their performance in gifted and talented services. If you need reassessment, it's done only once in elementary, once in middle school, and once in high school. I know most of you are only pretty much doing if you are doing reassessment, you're doing it in elementary and middle school going into high school. As students transition to the next grade level, to tailor their services at the next level that they go for. And then a lot have, so I would be very careful to look at your policies to see if you are offering a reassessment, and when are you doing those reassessment, or if you came in and you walked in and you started to decide to reassess, look at your policies to see, does it say we do not reassess or that you do? So you will not be against your own district policies to look what's going on. And then I will look at making sure you have whatever your reassessment you're using actually tailors to go into, if you're looking at going into middle school, going into being more content driven instead of the just general intellect to more academic specific. What are those categories you're looking at? Also looking at that going into high school, and what tests are you using to do that as you move forward, or what is your reassessment policy or procedures of what methods you're using for that. Yes, so Nancy put out that she knows that some districts are adopting new board policies and not noticing, and not noticing that the language is overriding their policy. They say they did not reassess. So it's probably looking at your procedures and looking at your manual of what you're doing out there to be very clear as we move forward. Then to exiting. So you should have a policy related to exiting your students from gifted and talented services based on multiple criteria, including student performance in response to services. It is done by your selection, finalized by a committee, decision with consultation from the parents and students regarding the students' educational needs. Definitely work around your parents and your students when you're exiting to ensure that everyone knows the rationale why they're being removed from services, but then also remember it is based on gifted and talented services. It's not based on what they're doing in rotation. It's not based on what they're doing in the regular content classroom unless that's part of their DT services. So be very clear when you're working on your procedures for this, that you have those, what is the criteria and what are you looking for in student performance related to services, and then how does that get communicated to your parents and to that student, and hopefully you have a step-by-step process so everyone knows this is where we're going, and it's not an automatic removal on your behalf as a district. Also remember, if a student or a parent does this, say, we want to exit, allow them to exit. You want the people who are there for their own best interest.
A column that says,
but as you work, you want to safeguard yourself as a district on exiting out of the program.
So 100% of the day, this person is receiving GT funds. That's what.
And so someone's going to provide their criteria. Do they use for the handbook for performance criteria? And I think once we look at more building out also our progress monitoring and those pieces, that will help us, a lot of you with your exiting process. And then the final one is appeals, and allow students, parents, and educators to appeal placement decisions in a timely manner and to present new data if appropriate. So I think the most people that use appeals are your parents when they are questioning placement decisions. Make sure it's clear in your letters and your notification and your procedures. What is your time? what is their response time. Be clear on when you're sending out to this, your notifications so that they can answer in a timely manner, and then kind of know in your own tracking system what's a non-response and when responses should be coming in, so that you can have your systems in place. And then what data are you may accept or may not accept? What will you consider as you go forward, as you look at the appeal process? So going back to a couple of questions. So if you have a parent who absolutely does not want their student to be exited, I think that's where you really have to have your documentation in place. And then you have that component in your exiting process where there is a student component, a parent component, and then what you're doing as the district. So you're looking at everyone, this is what this child has to do and what the parent has to do for continued placement. If they don't meet these pieces and you have it documented, and I would say before you start the process, when you walk into the process, this is where you have that parent come in and have that conversation. These are the steps that your child has to do to maintain in our program. And then once they fail to make these steps, you as a selection committee or a member of that selection committee have your proper documentation. You've done everything with that parent's notice of this is what your child has to do to comply. If they're not, this is what they have to do, and make it a feasible time period. But if they're not doing it and the parent is not doing their piece, you've done your due process. So once everyone knows what their process is, they can't counteract. Now, if they want their child to be there, they're going to have to make sure their child does it. And so I think that is one way to address that. And most times your appeal process to a certain point will be a part of your grievance process, and you might want to make sure they understand their grievance process. As parents who call me, I refer them right back to you as a district. Also talking to them as to look at the policy to make sure that they're understanding, and it's just not an automatic, this is how we go. So that's why everyone should be very clear on what is happening. Just make sure everybody understands. All right. So this is that open window time. Anyone wants to share what they're doing in their district on either furlough, or if you got questions on furlough, appeals, exiting, I'll give you the floor. Great. Well, we'll come back if someone wants to share. All right, sure it's there. All righty. As you saw, well, just to update, so I kind of broke up the next identification to 4 parts. So we are here today with part 1 with policy. So our next one will be initial identification. I have asked some volunteers kind of talk about their identification process. If you would like to share what you're doing in your district. As you know, as an agency, and then myself, we do not get into the testing and the measures that you're using. So if someone would like to really talk about the measures that they're using, the tests, those are specific questions you have about identification and the initial one, send them to me and I will send it to those who have agreed to share as we move forward. Part 3 will be talking about kindergarten and that process, and then part 4, we will be looking at that selection committee and our ongoing services. And so let me go back to the chat. So the question on the form for PINGS coding that changed. So it's a 01 or a 01. It's going to be the student attendance accounting handbook, but I will send that. I will put a link to that on our resources page for you also. So let me write that down. Okay. And I'm going to come right back to the chat. One more. All right. And these are my tentative spring dates. So we might not go all the way into June. We might end in May, depending on season. So May 19th may be our last one as we go forward. All right, so we're down to questions. So let me go back up for a minute. Yes, I will be sharing the updated EHB policy with you. I have been given permission to put those out. So I will put, actually I will give a minute. I will come out of this webinar. And if you have questions, this is, I didn't update them. Today's the day. And then I will come out of there and show you those language, but then I will also post them. And let's move slowly. So while that's loading, I will read questions. So, looking at Start's question, so you have a virtual, I am a virtual school, that I have issue with parents bringing their evaluations and placement from districts across Texas. Am I allowed to create a policy that requires retest? So as a virtual school, and if you have your own policies, actually you can create your own policies to require whatever states. Yeah, you can actually require them to retest or to follow your testing procedures and use those materials within your program or your district for that. But if you want to call me and we'll talk a little bit more, please do. Parent, okay. Good. Parent letter, a teacher recommendation letter, and this is for appeals. Okay. And that might be a good thing to use as part of your process for exiting a student. So the Zoom meetings will still be the 9 and 1 alternating. I think that works. If that doesn't, if y'all like one set time, let me know. I think kind of flip-flopping and they're not always held you hostage for 1 hour at a certain point in time every Tuesday. And so at our next meeting, I will put up the retention records information to answer, and I will provide that for how long do we keep it? And I will do that. Let me get back to that one. One more minute. There you go. Okay. So I'm kind of missing your unless they're on military question. So placement. So I think I need some more context for that one. I'm missing that one. So yes, the 121 meeting will be a 1 o'clock meeting. So the Mel Harlan's question on STAR. So if they're accelerated, no, they take the, so if they're accelerated, so say I'm just going to use 3rd grade, but they're taking 4th grade math and they're going to take the 4th grade STAR. They do not take the 3rd grade. Being very simple. So whatever their course they're in, not their grade level, whatever course they're in, enrolled in, that's the STAR test that they take. And you denote that some kind of way, but that is what they take. So they're your 8th graders mainly, so if they're taking Algebra 1, they are not taking 8th grade STAR. They are taking Algebra, the ELC. All right, so let me see if that pulled up. All right, so. So if they skipped Algebra 1, so some kind of way, if they skipped Algebra 1, you need to show how you determine mastery for Algebra 1. They are taking Algebra 2. They don't have to, whatever you put in your note for mastery of Algebra 1 will just suffice for that, because, yeah, especially if you have your students who've transferred. So as I said, I will put this out there. The new language has come out under program evaluation, as I showed you earlier, and it is here.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Yeah, I have to call TEA to do that.
So I will put this out for those who are been looking for this. Got permission this morning to put that out. So this is your local policy that they provide. I want to say I probably pulled up the very first one that's only one district and not without an inter-district. So, yeah. So as you see, they only have one transfer policy information here. So, go back. For those who are looking for that, take that snapshot. It is 9:54. If there are no other questions, I want to say Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Take some time off, get some rest, take a break. Try to take nothing home over the holidays as we go forward. So the policy, I will put it on our GT resources page for those who are looking for it. I might also post it on our main page, but it will definitely be going, it definitely went out to your school districts in the update in end of October, should have been mailed out in November. So I think it's going to depend on your local district when they do their board policy updates. Yes, it was update 114. When they post it locally or do those updates. And so depending on most board approvals, if it's not this month, it probably will be next month as they approve any of these updates that's going out. So probably at the very latest, a district should be updating, if they're not doing it in January, February. So, but you have it. All right. If there are no other questions, thank you, Angela. I'm gonna try my best. This year, I'm doing we've been given a couple of extra days, and so we actually will have more than a week off for a vacation, and so it's gonna be nice. So, all right, have a great one. I'm going to go ahead and end, and if you need anything, you know how to reach me, and Happy New Year, everyone. All right.